the great conservative movement of America and of our time. A brush fire of freedom that's being lit all over this country. We, as an irate, tireless American populace, will overcome the few radical leftists that control the levers of power today. Joe Biden's failed economic policies has given us inflation like you can't believe, and the border is in disarray.
It's amazing how few of the people commenting on this have actually bothered to go see what's happening. Well, Congressman Andy Biggs of Arizona actually went to the border.
Biggs, where's Andy? Boy, oh boy, Andy. There's a guy. He's tough.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a regular podcast. And we try with great guests who will come in and tell what's going on from their perspectives. And so you can get a feel for what's going on in the deep state, the Uni Party, the Cartel, all of those things kind of wrapped into one. I am so honored today to have my friend, the founder of the Western Journal. He's the publisher. It's an online news source. It's one of my regular go-to sources for news and what's happening. Floyd Brown. He has spent the last 40 years as advocating and an activist for conservative ideas. He's fantastic. He is the author of a book called An Unlikely Alliance of Americans Fighting Back for Faith and Freedom. The book illustrates how we can implement peaceful resistance against the immorality and policies of the radical left. It was just released. Floyd, I'm so happy that you're with me today. Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure. It's great to be with you, and likewise, thank you for all of the work that you've done in the last few weeks to secure freedom and to rebuild the House of Representatives and get it functioning in a way that is more conducive to citizen involvement and citizen control, and actually having members, this is so revolutionary, actually voting on bills and deciding what's happening, and not just a speaker that is kind of like an all-over dictator telling everybody what they can and cannot do. So I know it was a really tough battle, and I just want you to know I admire your courage and your steadfastness through that entire battle, and my hat's off to you and your other colleagues that stuck with it. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm so honored that you would say those kind words about me, my colleagues that fought on that. And then I wasn't going to go there until later in this our podcast, but let's go ahead and start there, because I think a lot of people, it's on their mind. And I want to give a little background and then get your thoughts on this. So on November 8th, we had our election in America, and the red wave didn't materialize, right? And it was a problem. And so I think that America, particularly Republicans and conservatives, said, we really need a change. We need to change the way we do things. We need to change things up. And for me, that meant you have to have a change at the highest level. So I ran for the speakership, and on November 15th, Kevin McCarthy, he beat me handily. But there were 36 votes that voted against him. And when I was like, well, that sends a signal. And not all those votes for Freedom Caucus. It was from all over the conference. And so we decided, several of us, that we needed to challenge him, and we needed to open up the body, and we needed to diffuse power. And so real quickly, before I get to another question that I've just got to ask you, but when you saw this last week, and I had people, big donors and stuff, and the members of the cartel really castigating us and saying that we were embarrassing the Republican Party. And it won't hurt my feelings if you think so, but what did you think was happening when you watched and observed 15 ballots, open debate on the floor, vigorous, passionate debate on the floor?
I thought, isn't it amazing democracy's breaking out. I mean, people don't understand how corrupt the system is in Washington. I spent 15 years there, and I left in 1996, which was quite a while ago. But as it has progressed since then, the system has only gotten more corrupt. Most people don't understand the way the system works in terms of money raising, and how individual members inside the conference are basically judged on what money they raise and how they raise it. And then the committee memberships and the committee chairmanships and all of these different positions are basically handed out after they evaluate how much money you've raised. The problem with that system and why it doesn't work is because much of this money is being raised in Washington through the special interests that have an outstretched desire to impact what's happening in the committee process.
Right.
So you know, if you want to get on the Ways and Means Committee, for example, they actually had a schedule, and they told you, okay, you got to raise this much, and then you'll get this committee assignment. And if you raise that much, you'll get this assignment. And so members are forced to turn to the Washington elite for that money, for the PAC money. And so there's like this competition inside the Republican Party for positions, and the way they get it is based on how much money they raise. And it's a completely corrupt system because it has the members focusing on making the donors happy as opposed to making their constituents happy. And
Right.
the founders understood that the Congress had to be closest to the people. That's where the people's voice really resides. And so what you did was break the back of a very corrupt system. So I was pleased as punch knowing what was really going on. Most people don't ever get underneath the system to know what's going on. They don't know how the Rules Committee has been completely bastardized to control the House of Representatives, and how it limited individuals' members' ability to even speak out on issues. Everything went through Rules. Rules was, controlled by the old bulls of the party. The biggest PAC fundraisers in the party controlled the rules. And so it was a system that limited the ability of people in the grassroots to really impact their members. And so you were breaking the back of that system, and I'm very thankful you did. And I understand how much courage it took, because I'm sure you got a tremendous amount of pushback because you were limiting the power of the Uni Party. You were limiting the power of Washington, D.C. And whenever you challenge that power structure, they strike back, and strike back hard.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's so much to unpack with what you said. I mean, I will just relate a story about that. So I'm sure if people have followed me, I've told this story before. But when I won the primary, my first time, there was really no general, and so they had some of us come back who really didn't have a general, and they gave us some kind of orientation, and we went to this breakfast, a little breakfast. My wife's sitting next to me at the time. And I'll always remember, I've got a fork in my hand. I'm getting ready to take a bite. And the guy says something like, and each of you will be expected to raise $250,000. And I just said, that sounds like pay for play to me. And he says, it is pay for play. and I thought, well, at least kudos. At least he's honest enough to say it is pay for play, But the reality is, the powers that be expect you to raise oodles and oodles of money, and in my first election they spent $350,000 against me, and that was the first time that we'd ever actually been able to peel back the curtain, is my understanding, to see that our own Republican guys had taken money that had been raised by other Republicans to play in a primary against someone because I was going to be a conservative Freedom Caucus member. I mean, that's what goes on back in DC.
Well, and it's even so bad. Sometimes they play in general elections against Republicans.
Yep.
It may not be the actual caucus members, but it will be the PACs that are aligned with those particular
Yeah,
caucus members.
exactly. I call them the interlocking. That's why I call it the cartel, because you've got a member, and then you've got all these PACs and special interests, even bureaucracies that are. We could get into that and talk about how the federal government funnels money back in that gets used for political purposes against people, but
All the time.
yeah, all the time. And then it's interlocking like a cartel, these relationships are. So there's culpable deniability, if I can put it that way. So it won't be the National Republican Congressional Committee necessarily, but it'll be somebody's PAC that's given to another PAC, and they've washed and laundered the money ostensibly, and they're going to come after a conservative Republican.
And a lot of times they're washing government money.
Yeah.
I mean, people have to realize money is fungible. And what that means is you take an organization like Planned Parenthood. So Planned Parenthood is getting money from the federal government, but they're also a massive donor to political campaigns. And
Right.
so basically they might replace the money that they get from private sources with this government money, and that frees up their private money to spend on all these political campaigns. And so it's a system whereby there's a tremendous amount of corruption. We saw this with the whole FTX Ukraine situation, where Zelensky is investing in a company with money he ostensibly gets from the United States because we're his number one funder. That money is being funneled back to the company that is the number two donor to the Democratic Party.
Right.
And it's a wash and rinse and rinse and wash. But basically, it's U.S. taxpayers' dollars that are weaponized against the taxpayers.
That's right. I mean, that's. I was trying to explain that to somebody yesterday in an interview that I was giving. I mean, like, so another way we do it. When I say we, I mean the federal government. Is the Congress will provide grant money, right? They're going to give grant money to some group. It's going to go to an NGO or a 501c3 or some other group, and that money is going to get pushed around and then spit out to be used in political campaigns to run it back through again. It's insidious.
And one of the worst places is the border, because there's all of this money for these different NGOs to help deal with, quote, the immigration crisis, but it's become a business to these nonprofit organizations. In fact, the whole term nonprofit is not really a very good term to use, because people take profits from these nonprofits in the form of salary and grants and other things. So they really, they call themselves nonprofits, but they're really run for the benefit of the people that work for the organizations. And so it creates this recycling of money back into the Uni Party.
Right.
And the Defense Department, they're a big example of it, because one of the major donors to Capitol Hill are these very same defense contractors. The pharmaceutical industry, I call it the medical industrial complex. It's the same way. They're funneling the money back to the members, and it's all pay to play, and it's all vote buying. They're literally buying votes, in my opinion. And I don't know how we eventually break this system, but the truth is you made a big step forward by holding the line and standing strong and standing courageous in this recent battle. And I hope that the conference is changed as a result of it.
Well, I hope so too. And I mean, so one of the ways, Floyd, that I think you corrected, and what we were trying to do, is to diffuse power away from the four corners, what they call the four corners. So you got the Speaker of the House. In this case, it's going to be a Republican. Before it was a Democrat. obviously, and then you have the minority leader, and then you have the majority leader and the minority leader in the Senate, and they basically get in the room and make these decisions. And I want to share with you a quote I saw last night from Paul Ryan. This came out. It said he told CNN regarding the McCarthy rules battle with the 20, and that was with us. It's quotes. "Let me say this. I think I had too much power as speaker," close quote. And then another quote. "I really do. Look, the thing that bothered me the most were these omnibuses, a bill that thick that 4 people ultimately decide on," and close quote. And he had the power to fix it. He didn't do it. So I don't want to relitigate that, but I'll just say that is actually what happens in the cartel. I mean, in DC, it's those 4 people. They've got their lieutenants on that lead the rules committee in each body, and they control so much, and they give it to us with no time to read, digest. Then you don't have an opportunity to amend. You don't have an opportunity to make changes. You don't have an opportunity to represent your constituents. And Matt Rosendale from Montana on the floor last week, he made a terrific point. He said, if you're just watching Congress for the first time, you're thinking to yourself, this is messy, but at least they're all on the floor. They're debating. They're going back and forth. Floyd, that was probably the only time that's happened since I've been in the United States Congress. And you've been there. You've seen it. How often does it happen?
Yeah, it basically the only time everybody gets together is for the State of the Union. And, it's very sad how it has devolved. And you coming in with your experience in the Arizona legislature, which is run very differently, you must have been shocked.
I was shocked. Floyd. I remember again before I was even sworn in. Now the general's over, and we have a conference, and somebody from I don't even know these guys. I don't know anybody really in Congress at that point. And somebody comes up from Freedom Caucus and he says to me, "Hey, Andy, we're going to introduce a rule change proposing that we do a roll call vote on every bill before it gets sent to the Senate." And I said, "Wait a second, we don't do that? How can you not do that?" And so most people don't realize this. I mean, and Rosendale was talking about this too. And you've seen it because you've been around, but I mean, they call them suspension votes. I had no idea. In fact, it took me months to figure out that was really what they were doing. I would fly. We typically fly back on a Sunday or Monday. You're flying back, and while you're getting there, while you're in the air, there's 5 or 6 people, 2 or 3 from each side, and they've got a stack of bills and legislation, and they're going through, and they're voting on them with a voice vote, and basically saying we got a quorum. And we're going to waive and suspend the rules.
And they don't have a quorum when they do that.
Yeah, they don't have a quorum. There's
right.
5 or 6 people on the floor, but they're saying they do. And they're suspending the rules and sending it over to the Senate. Now, the idea was, I guess originally was you're going to name a post office somewhere. It's inconsequential, so you can do it. But here again, we get to that thing where the speaker and the minority leader, they agree on what bills can come on the floor. And there have been bills that have spent billions and billions of dollars that they were trying to run through suspension. And I think that the American people, they sense something's terribly wrong. That's why we have such a low approval rating. But they sense something's terribly wrong, but they aren't quite sure how to get there and fix it. And that's what the fight was for last week, to open this up, change the rules, give us time to read a bill. How about before you can come on the floor and say we're going to do a bill about the border and the border fence, and by the way, we're going to throw in $40 billion to go to Ukraine. How about no? You got to have a single subject. You got to have and amendments need to be germane. You need to allow people to make amendments, and then you need to get back in the budget process so we have at least a chance to maybe balance a budget one day and stop the structural deficit and this very dangerous path to bankruptcy that we're on. So, I mean, that's really what it was all about. We tried to message that, but as you know, some of the even conservative outlets were so hostile to changing up the doing anything radical.
Yeah, what most people don't understand is that there are a lot of conservatives that are a part of the Uni Party also. Stan Evans, who was a mentor of mine, he's since passed away.
Yeah.
He used to tell a story. He said, before we got to Washington, D.C., we knew that place was a cesspool. He said, and then when we got here and we started working, we realized it's actually a hot tub. and that happens to a lot of conservatives. It's actually one of the reasons why I left. I had the pleasure of working for someone I consider a great man, Bob Dole. And he was Senate Majority Leader at the time. And so I had a glimpse into the kind of power that these members have. And it's absolutely unbelievable, the power. I would travel with him a lot, and he would go like this, and a jet airplane from U.S. Tobacco or Philip Morris or ConAgra or Archer Daniels Midland would show up on the tarmac, and he'd be flying. And I think when you see the way the system, and I don't think they do that anymore, but back in those days, it was amazing to see the kind of power that someone who is a Senate Majority Leader had over the Uni Party. And the truth is that it is a corrupt system, and it has to be changed. And then during COVID, they started that proxy voting, which to me is even worse, because members weren't even showing up for weeks and weeks at a time. And they didn't even know what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, during the proxy vote, which I believed was unconstitutional, and which I never did. I never did a single proxy vote. And I'll say, to his credit, Kevin McCarthy never did a single proxy vote. So he and I were simpatico on that, but because he thought it was unconstitutional as well. But the reality is, Floyd, there were people I never saw. I did not see them in committee hearings. I did not see them in on the floor. There were times, Floyd, that I flew back because I knew I had a committee hearing, and my position is, if I've got a committee hearing, I need to be at that hearing, right? Occasionally they would do a hybrid, but I actually, there were times I just didn't fly back anymore for the hearing. I would just do it on the computer. Why? Because I would fly back. There were times I would fly back, and the committee hearing room was locked. They wouldn't even let me in because it was all going to be on Zoom or something like that. And I'm like, I don't understand this. I committed and gave my oath to the Constitution to come back here and fight, and not just fight, but defend the Constitution, but to represent my constituents. We have 750,000 people roughly in my district. I'm going to come back and be present. They may not like, some of them say, you never represent me. I said, well, I do represent you. We just disagree. You would never vote for me, but that's okay. I told you what I would do, and I'm doing what I said I would do, but they would not let you do it. And the same thing goes on in the floor when you cannot offer an amendment, which, by the way, in the 6 years I've been in Congress, there was not a single bill with an open rule.
Wow.
Not a single one. And so what that means for people who are watching, that means there was not a single bill that would go down there where anybody could just show up on the floor. It used to be you could actually write it out on a napkin or something, anything on the back of a piece of scratch paper, what your amendment was, put it in, and you would have an opportunity to debate that. No more. You can't. It hasn't happened the entire time I've been in Congress. And in the 115th Congress, Floyd, which Paul Ryan was the Speaker of, it had the most closed rule bills in the history, I believe, of the entire country. And that was with the Republicans. So when you get that, and you got the rules that's not making any, they're just picking and choosing so very select amendments to make them in order so you can get a small debate. And you get down for a 4,000 page bill that's going to spend $2 trillion, and they're going to say, each side gets 30 minutes to debate this, right? I mean, the American people should be outraged.
Yeah,
and so
the question
we're trying to change that.
Be asked, who's making those decisions? And they're being made by people on committee staffs that are almost completely disconnected from the constituents. And because you have your committee staff and then you have your personal staff. And most of the people on these committee staffs are subject area experts. And those subject area experts are constantly, they go to the State Department and then they come up to the Hill and then they go, they're rotating through an NGO or another organization. And these people just keep rotating around, but they're part of this permanent class in DC that is representing the whole DC system. And, people ask, why are the richest counties in America all surrounding DC? Well, you got Montgomery County, Maryland, you've got, Fairfax County, Virginia, you've got Arlington County, you've got, the town of Alexandria. These places are fabulously wealthy, and they're fabulously wealthy for a reason. It's because of this system that has built up that funnels money to all the people that are there participating in it.
Yeah. Hey, let's shift gears for just the last few minutes. I mean, you and I could talk about this all day because, I mean, our own experiences that we've seen, it's just remarkable, and I want the American people to know that. I will come back to this because I have a funny thing to share with you about what happened. But anyway, I got to get to this. In August, I think it was 42 FBI agents and other law enforcement showed up at Mar-a-Lago, and they go through and they're going through the first lady's sock drawer, her dresser. They're going through Barron Trump's, the young teenage son of the former First Lady Melania and President Trump. They're going through his stuff, and they're just and the outrage in the media about him and what Joe Biden said about him. Oh, he's going to cause World War III. He's got the nuclear codes, but all of this garbage, which is untrue, of course. And then we find out on November 4th, supposedly, and I have a question about the timeline. I think the timeline's messed up. But on November 4th, supposedly, someone on the Biden team contacts DOJ and said, hey, we found some classified information here. So when did they find that classified information? And why did they not disclose it? And where have been the warrants since they've found now 3 locations with classified documents that Joe Biden, when he was vice president, took out? And then you mentioned something earlier, and I want you to mention about the laptop. So Floyd, give me your insight, your concerns as well.
Well, first of all, you have to understand that when President Trump had those documents, he had every right to declassify those documents as president of the United States.
Yes.
Okay. So he believes that those documents are declassified, that they're not top secret. Okay. Because he declassified them. And so, and he had the right and the power to do that when he was the sitting president of the United States. Joe Biden, when he was vice president, didn't have that power, but he took reams and reams of highly classified information. And you're right, now there's 3 locations. I don't know where the 3rd location is, but we know, one was a closet at this Penn Biden Center for the University of Pennsylvania. One is his garage where he keeps it with his Corvette. And I'm not sure where the other is, but interestingly enough, these were actually, I believe, more serious documents because from my understanding, it included our deal with Iran, which was highly classified, and other documents about Ukraine that we know Hunter Biden, his son, was actively involved in Ukraine and had worked with Burisma. And so there are just so many different questions here. But fundamentally, what it boils down to is that as President Donald Trump was lied about, he was maligned, and they weaponized the Department of Justice to go after a sitting president of the United States. And the only reason they were able to do that was because Barack Obama systematically rebuilt the Department of Justice during his 8 years in office. And he stoked and he filled that building with hard left political activists. And the Department of Justice has been going after conservatives, has been going after Republicans since Obama did that. I actually wrote a book back in the day called Obama's Enemies List, and I talked about how Obama was very aggressive about going after his enemies, both on the left and the right. And they politicized and weaponized the Department of Justice. So given that as the backdrop, now what we see is what they were accusing Trump of doing, they were actually doing. And this is a pattern we've seen a lot. I call it the projection phenomenon. Is they always claim Trump is doing things, but it's actually things they've been up to and things that they've been doing. And, President Trump, he hadn't been a part of this permanent class in DC. He hadn't been part of this long-term political infrastructure. So he kind of came in as this wild card, and they did everything they could to frustrate him and to stop him from achieving his agenda.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Floyd, I view Donald Trump as the great disruptor because, well, I've got a theory on this. My theory was that the Uni Party, the cartel, if you will, was content to just keep moving on the path because we were moving to Marxist socialism inexorably. Then Donald Trump comes in, he disrupts everything, right? So now at that point, once they saw he was in, they have begun stepping up everything and accelerating everything they possibly can. But that's a different topic, different time.
I agree with that analysis, though. They are accelerating, but I also believe they've over-accelerated and they've gotten overextended, and that the American people are going to continue to push back. And, I believe the red wave did materialize, but that they have been systematically abusing our election system also, right, in certain key jurisdictions, including here in Maricopa County. But that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, where both Floyd and I live, he on the far west side and I'm on the far east side of this, one of the biggest counties in the country with over 5 million people in that county. So, but I just want to say, as we get ready to wrap up here, I got two things I got to do here. But one is there's got to be at least two complete investigations that I think these Biden documents really point to. And by the way, I was talking to someone earlier this week who was in the building where the Penn Biden Center is, and they tell me that they weren't moving out. That isn't how come they found it, because they have a long-term lease. So we're trying to get to that. So that was what was reported to me. But you have to investigate the entire Biden family. You have to, because this points to everything. I mean, you talked about the Iran deal, and you talked about Ukraine. How about China? China's funding that project. So you've got so much there. The whole Biden family. How about Jim Biden making money on housing units that are being constructed in Afghanistan and other places when he doesn't have any expertise in that. So that's one thing. Then the other thing is you have to get to the bottom of the deep state and the politicization, the weaponization of DOJ, FBI. We saw it with IRS. We know that ATF has now been weaponized. We know that all of the institutions of the bureaucracy have been weaponized now against conservatives and against all Americans because they're attacking their freedoms. So I just wanted to say I'm with you on that. But I got to show you this thing, Floyd. I don't know if it'll show up. but this is something I didn't see it because I was gone, right? Because I was back in DC. But I got this letter that came apparently dated January 3rd, 23rd. It simply says stupid, stupid, stupid. Now I don't know whether she meant that trying to open up the House and restore freedom and liberty and representation and change the path that we're on to a better path is stupid, or whether people who are supporting Kevin McCarthy were stupid. I don't know. But all I know is it just gave me such a chuckle because I suspect this individual is telling me that she thought I was stupid. But Floyd, last word, I think we're going to see some tremendous changes in the House. Already, Mr. McCarthy has done some things that I don't think he would have done had we not had that floor fight last week. And I think the American people I think the Republic is strong enough. I think the Republican Party is strong enough. And I think the institution of Congress is strong enough to allow us to have these kind of vigorous, passionate, and hopefully reasoned debates about the direction of this country. Your final thoughts, sir.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that list is somebody has to stop the weaponization of big tech against America.
Yes.
Because big tech is being used to basically go around the First Amendment. They're outsourcing the control of speech from government to big tech. And
you've been victimized by that. Western Journal has been victimized.
Every American has been victimized by that. And but in particular, Western journalism has had a lot of involved. In fact, I wrote an entire book called Big Tech Tyrants, all about what they had been doing over the course of these last few years. None of this is secret. You just have to kind of work to ferret out the information. And I'm hopeful that, the founders put the First Amendment in the Constitution for a reason. It's only with vigorous debate that we can all come together and work our differences out. When you tell people you're not legitimate, you can't speak, then that builds negative energy. And in my mind, it leads to violence. And so what we have to do is let everybody get it all off their chest, have a vigorous debate, and then you hold a vote. And the American people decide, Congress decides. Our system has these checks and balances for a reason. It was a I believe a divine system. And there's a tremendous wisdom in the U.S. Constitution that allows us all to live together. The millions of us, hundreds of millions of us, live together in peace and harmony, but you have to follow it.
Yeah, amen. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us today, and those who are watching on the revisit on the video. But I want to thank my friend Floyd Brown, an American patriot, just a fierce warrior for freedom. He's the founder and publisher of Western Journal, an online news source. It's one of my primary news sources I go to, and I just tell you, Floyd, thanks for taking some time with me. I'm sure we'll be talking again soon, and God bless you and your family.
And keep up the fight.
I'll do that. Thanks, everybody. And with that, we're out.